questions up together and sort of tease things out that have been taking place over the last couple of days. So I will keep introductions extremely simple, and what we'll do is have discussion at the end unless there are any immediate questions or points of clarification for the individual speakers, and then we'll sort of hold off for broader discussion after we've heard the papers. So I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Sarah Lee Castellan, and we will floor over to you. Thank you.
All right, so it's Friday morning. Right. I've had a horrendous journey to get here, but in the same way, it kind of fits into the paper that I give today, because, all right, it's 1998. I know that's like a long time ago for some people, but for me it seems yesterday, right? And I'm in this packed taxi in Durban, South Africa, right? And this song is playing, but it's playing so freaking loud that the windows are shaking, right? And we're packed in, right? And the song, all right, is by this Kwaito group called Shaka, and it's called Makwerekwere, all right? All right, so Kwaito has its roots in township culture, and it draws on South African music genres such as the skanda. It's influenced by artists such as Brenda Fassie, who's like our Madonna of the townships, and also it's shaped by UK dance music of the late 80s and 90s. And it's sung in this kind of Tutsi tal, it's like township flag. Right, but the song's title, Makwerekwere, has got its roots in replicating how South Africans would describe other Africans, how they described African language when they were talking about other Africans. Okay, so that's why it's called Makwerekwere, but over 2 decades later, like now, alright, Makwerekwere, the term, is kind of used in a derogatory manner, alright? So I'm okay to kind of stand up here and say it to you, but I need you to know that it's not something I like using as a term, alright? But I also have a thing of, I'm going to see if we can try and claim it back. So I'm going to go back to this taxi ride that's jam-packed, right? And it's like a minibus taxi, so there's 1, 2, 3 rows, alright? And when I mean it's packed, I mean there's 4 or 5, 6 people in the back row, 4 or 5 or 6 people in the second row, and there's 4 of us in the front row, and I'm in the front row. And every time I hail a cab, alright, which you have to do it like this if you're in Durban, if you want to go to university, every driver makes me sit next to him in the front row, right? Okay. I'm the only white girl in this taxi bus, right? And I'm realizing that the reason why I get to sit in the front row in comfort all the time next to the driver is because of my white skin. So I gets on my nerves, and I tell one of my senior friends, and then she says to me I need to relax about it, because basically, right, what he's doing is by having a white girl sitting next to him, he's scoring on 2 things. 1, it shows that he's the safest driver in Durban, because even white girls take his taxi. And then secondly, he's got a white girlfriend, so in social stakes, he's all the way up there. Okay, that's great, but it still makes me feel uncomfortable, because I know it's not white privilege again. And this kind of gets me thinking again, and something that's been playing over and over all the time, is how my white skin marks me as an outsider. And there's an Afrikaans term for it, uitlander. So it doesn't matter how long I've been in South Africa, I'm always going to be a foreigner in some way. I'm never going to be African enough. Okay, so South African identity construction is tied up with concepts of belonging or not belonging, being a local or a foreigner. And what I want to show in this paper is how South Africans are in fact Makwerekwere themselves. So we go on about how we use this term, Makwerekwere, to say that someone's an outsider, but we ourselves are outsiders too. Alright, and the way to do this, to oppose this kind of xenophobic racist drive, is for us to push to look for our hybridity. And also, if we look for these sites of resistance against this nationalist and xenophobic drive, which has already done such damage to South Africans ourselves, we can find that moment of the site of resistance. So I'm going to look at 3 things. 1, I'm going to look at the Peace March in Durban in 2015. I'm going to look at Flatfoot Dance Company's Homeland, a section from it called Migration of the Feet of Kali. And then I'm going to look at a social and popular media culture response by these YouTube vloggers. Alright, too many things on the wall. You can't really see this, but I want to just go back to Makwerekwere. So here's it up on the YouTube link. And I just want to just go do a little bit more digging around this term Makwerekwere. So in this kind of YouTube comment, Nyani1, she writes how the word wasn't meant to be offensive, and she explains that the song, Makwerekwere, is all about educating South Africans about the other Africans coming into their country. And then there's a comment from DJ Dynamite, who's a Nigerian living in South Africa, and he says he lives in Yeovil. And this is really important because Yeovil is a suburb in Johannesburg that during apartheid was actually it was called grey area. So black people and white people lived there, and it was a real hotbed of political activism. So in a way, here we've got the space of hybridity, what Bob was talking about happening. DJ Dynamite then goes on about that not everyone, such as Nyana 1, will have this kind of mindset, all right, that it wasn't meant to be offensive. And then Zaman Landa enters at this point, and he starts debating with Nyana 1 about, you know, the correct spelling and the pronunciation. And then, if you like start digging a little bit deeper, it becomes clear that Zaman Landa accepts Nyana 1's argument when they confirm they are both Zulu. So they're both in the club. Alright? So again, we have this insider-outsider thing. Alright? Who belongs and who doesn't? Bronwyn Harris, who's the former project manager at the Centre for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, observes that emergent alongside a new nation discourse, the foreigner stands at a site where identity, racism, and violent practice are reproduced. Alright, some background information. See that? These kind of things, I don't like them. It's normally like the VCG group who like walks around with them and kind of points them. There's something I don't quite like about the choreography of that. Anyway, so I just want to talk about the legacy of apartheid, and I hope you can read the cartoon by Zipero. So, two things to note. In 1913, the Union of South Africa, which was the government of the 4 British colonies in South Africa, passed the Native Land Act, which resulted in black South Africans becoming foreigners in their own country. So from 1913, if you were classified as black, you weren't allowed to buy property in certain areas, you weren't allowed to move through certain areas, and already we have this kind of legislative choreography starting. Then during apartheid, you have the forced removals, which is the direct result of the Group Areas Act of 1950, and we also have these quasi-independent black homeland states set up. So already internally there's this notion of foreigner, not foreigner. Alright, so where I come from is that I access Benedict Anderson's work on nations as imagined communities, and also how these nations are limited in their shape. And this, it's also really good to kind of understand that in South Africa at this time, from 94 afterwards, and 94 is when we have our first democratic national election, we have kind of this constant flagging of new South Africa, South Africanness, new South Africa, what it is to be a South African, Simonia, and so on. And this is like what Michael Village calls a banal nationalism. But even though it's like this daily flagging, it's not without harm, right? But this new South Africa is the whole point, to kind of imagine this, this new country where we were previously segregated. But again, this new South Africa gives us the distinction between us and them. The last thing I want to say then is about with apartheid is that we had a history of people having to carry books, passes, pass books. So in the earlier slide, that was my version that I had to show. So this would mean that you were allowed to move through certain areas or be able to settle in certain areas or go to school in certain areas. So you always have to have your papers to show you. So you have internal migration in your own country. Also, what I want to say about that as well is it's important to understand in South Africa how we talk about race is not the same as the African-American, the American way of talking about race. In South Africa, race isn't about descent. It's not about like your great-grandparents or your grandparents or your mom and your dad. It's about what you look like. It's about your appearance. All right? So, next thing. Let's see if I can do that stuff. No. All right. So I just want to go talk about xenophobia in South Africa just for a little bit. What I want you to understand, which I've been kind of signaling along, is during apartheid, there is very limited opportunities for anyone outside of South Africa to come in, so other Africans to come in, or for South Africans to go into other African countries. So what we have is what we call a kind of external isolation, right? So we have a history of not being connected to Africa in itself. Then, with that, right, there's also with the isolation kind of hypothesis, there's also the internal isolation. So we've got external, international isolation, and then we've got internal isolation. And we've basically been, with our segregationist policy, we have been kind of conditioned to have a fear of the other, all right, even if that other is another South African. Also, just to keep banging on about it, it's important to know that apartheid in itself is a legislative choreography, all right? This is movement of bodies that are being controlled by the state. All right, so back to the new South Africa, all right? So we have this notion of the rainbow nation, which Desmond Tutu suggests, a home for many races and many cultures. And although Tutu did not intend it to be, the concept of South Africa as a rainbow nation now suggests containment of various ethnicities. And what scholars such as Sarah Nuttall and Cheryl and Michael argue for is that instead we should be looking for not the rainbow, the different colors, but rather looking for the creolized space, like the space where the blue goes into green and so on. So we start thinking about South African culture, not to erase our differences, but to highlight the complex process of making the connections across these different cultures. And this suggestion of a creolized space, or by extension, and I'm going to argue dance in South Africa is a creolized dance language, might be a way to resist this, all right? To resist this need to put us all into boxes and things around xenophobia. Before I go on to dance, I just want to crack on about how in South Africa it's important to note that we're a protest nation. We have a culture of protesting, and there's like this kind of embodied understanding of how we can use the body to move against the state. So even though the state's putting us with our passports and you're not allowed to move to certain places under apartheid, we're also quite aware of the power that body has when you put it into other spaces which are supposedly denied to you because of your race. Jane Duncan writes about how, like now in South Africa, we really tap into this protest culture, and I can say that as a South African, we will have a protest about anything, all right? But in a way, it's something that's really, really good. Okay, so my first example is the Peace March, all right, 2015. Just before I show you the clip, I just want to point out, if you can see, it says, keep the spirit of Ubuntu alive. Ubuntu is a kind of, it's a Zulu term, it's like a philosophy, a way of being. And so it's Ubuntu and Ubuntu is a Ubuntu and Ubuntu Ngabanya, which basically means I'm a person because of you. But it's not an othering, it's like, it's because of you, you make me. Alright, so it's kind of the other way around. And Ubuntu was used with our Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where we had people confessing to some of the awful things they did under apartheid. And I argue that if we as South Africans, and I'm also going to say maybe the rest of the world too, if we really push this notion of Ubuntu and also looking for the crossover, the hybridity, this might be a way for us to kind of resist kind of extreme nationalism and jingoistic drives. Video.
Which one is it?
Sorry, yeah, third one.
Third one?
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. So this is my other hometown, alright? And we had really, really bad xenophobic riots, alright? And then what happened is we had marches organized against the xenophobia.
Because now the government is taking the stand.
We talk to it anything, by the way, that's our dance, dance anything.
As South Africans, I think we are a part of the whole Africa and the whole world. So the international communities are welcome, all of them here in South Africa.
Don't hurt them, don't hurt other people. That's not what's in the teachings of humanity.
So here at that peace march, you see the mobilization of bodies marching against xenophobia. I just want to kind of pick up a few things about how South Africans understand how marches are choreographies of power, all right? And that a march, a moving mass of bodies, kind of taps into the corporeality, taps into the concept of Ubuntu and hybridity, all right? Because, like as Kineti states, like it's when you're in that crowd that you're quite close to somebody that kind of separation is limited. Okay, so what about time? So now I'm going to move to the piece by Flatfoot Dance Company. All right, and I just want to bang on again about how South African. All right, just so that you know that contemporary dance in South Africa, its origins are political and kind of based on an active defiance and activism. So if you're thinking in the 70s, 80s, we legislated not to be in the same spaces with each other, live in the same spaces, we are not allowed to sleep with people of different color. And here you have, kind of in the townships, people coming together and working on dance pieces. And so when you have someone of my color rolling over in contact improvisation with somebody else of another color, it's profoundly political, all right? And then, to get you to know as well, contemporary dance in South Africa in itself is hybrid, right? It's this mix mash of all these different forms. So from contact to Graham release to kind of isipansula, which is a township style, kwasa, which comes from the Congo, ballroom dancing, Balatinata, because we have the largest population of Indians outside of India, and also traditional South African languages, like dance languages such as Ngoma, which is the Zulu warrior training. So it's all this kind of stuff that comes together. So in a way, I would argue that contemporary dance in South Africa in itself is hybridity in motion. So the piece I want to just talk about quickly and show you a little bit is by Flatfoot Dance Company. It comes out of the Homeland Trilogy. This is the one piece that makes a trilogy. And it's kind of where Katak meets contemporary, meets hip-hop. And to quote Craighead, it's basically looking at the intersecting histories of Indian indentured labor, black migrant workers, and white privilege. First one.
Although purists may prefer classical art forms to be left exactly as they've been, there are also innovators who find ways of showing love and respect for their art in exciting new ways. Michelle has added some fresh ideas and
half an hour which would be Hindu, half an hour which would be Jewish, half an hour which would be one particular sect of Christianity, and then another sect of Christianity, and then something else. It's just the whole morning.
Is presenting a new work titled Migrations at the Feet of Kali, which promises to venture far beyond the comfort zone of convention.
An acclaimed choreographer, academic and dance innovator, Leanne founded Flatfoot in 2003, and the company now enjoys international recognition.
Please give me some background into Migrations at the Feet of Kali.
The work basically looks at the meeting of kind of colonial white history, the meeting of Indian indentured labour history in South Africa, and kind of black history. And it's really about how we imagine that past in terms of history, legacy, remembering.
You've worked with Ewok and Manesh countless times. Why do you believe the collaboration has worked so well?
I think Manesh is one of the most extraordinary performers in the country at the moment, and so for me the opportunity to work with him again and to kind of share that gift of storytelling, because I think Kathak is primarily a storytelling art form, and to take that form and have him willing to shift it, change it, move it, and use it in another kind of way has been an incredible gift.
What role do you believe that dance, as well as the performing arts in general, can play in bridging the gap between the cultural divisions?
As an artist, your responsibility is to healing and to nation building and to cohesion and to telling stories that are difficult. I think the histories that are being told are not easy histories. I think there's quite a lot of painful memory in the work, but I think that's the point, is that we can't bury history. We can't pretend those things don't exist. I watch the young dancers in the work learn about indentured labour. And so going on this amazing journey of also having to talk and learn about other kinds of processes. For me, an artist, you know, your job is to educate, to be an activist, also to make something beautiful, I hope.
Shri Manesh Maranj is one of South Africa's foremost Kathak exponents, as well as being a teacher and artistic
I'd like
director.
to let you watch it all, and when you have the artist speak, but I'm just worried about time. So I want to just go on to the last bit, which is looking at dance on the screen, and just to say that this particular kind of example for me really kind of echoes when Martin writes about how bodies, when you look at how dance displays, how bodies are placed in motion, when bodies are placed in motion, how traces of the forces of contestation that can be found in society at large. So I want to just close with something a little bit more upbeat. And we're gonna, I'm going to introduce you to Benga dance, alright? So we had Kwaito in the beginning, which was my generation. Now, like, it's all about the Gom, alright? So Gom is a kind of house dance that comes from Durban. It is similar to Shangaan Electro, which you might not know, but it's basically, I can say this, when you dance it, you want to be as fluid as possible, alright? And like wavy arms, toe taps, and so on. When there was an interview with Jules, the DJ, he's like this really, really famous producer, he says when you benga, so benga, like when you dance, when you benga dance, you want to show how flexible you are. You really want to show that there are no bones in your body. Okay. So there's two things I just want to like push here. One, you're dealing with Gom, which is kind of club culture dance that in itself is hybrid. It's influenced by Kwaito, it's influenced by house dance from the UK, from the USA. It's got this mismatch of kind of different things. If I was taking a taxi this morning to go to the university to teach, where I used to teach, we'd be hearing Gom in the taxi, not Kwaito. I'd be very worried about the windows too, because Gom's got like a really, really heavy bass, and that's the whole point, so that the taxis look like they're moving. So you would choose your taxi on who's got the best sound system, all right? And then the other thing I want to just push is that the Benga dance in itself, where the dancer plays with their flexibility, like stressing your ability to be flexible, and there's a sense of fluidity and ease. In itself, it's a sign about how there's this kind of hybridity in motion and how we need to be looking at the Ubuntu. Also, Benga, I would also argue, is got quite a lot of kwasa kwasa in, which is a Congolese dance style with a lot of like kind of knee movements as such. So, 2017, we have another big rise of xenophobia. These are these rugged eyes and girl rugged eyes are like really, really popular in like my hometown, and they're always uploading videos on YouTube. They've got a huge following. And during the xenophobic uprising, they put on a video. Do you want to go into the last thing? Okay, so this is Benga dance. Like I did with the first one with the Makwerekwere about Umshaka. And there's kind of an awareness here with Rugged Eye stating that he's going to use dance against xenophobia. He knows, as a young person, he knows that his body is able to kind of find those sites of resistance against the kind of dominant discourse of xenophobia. If we carry on showing you the peace march, what happens in that peace march is that actually it gets attacked by people who are xenophobic. So even when you're marching against xenophobia, there's xenophobic acts that are happening. A few things as well, the different people who are commenting on this video come from different parts. There's someone who is South African living in London, there's someone from Zambia, there's someone who's from Angola. But what's important that I want to just echo is that with reading those comments, it kind of like goes back to that first slide of the protester holding his placard about my Africa, your Africa, our Africa, and how Africa belongs to all of us. So it kind of picks up about how South Africans are we're hybrid in nature. So if I was going to make chicken tonight, all right, I would choose between chicken a la king, which I think is supposed to be English. I would choose between Durban curry, that's my hometown, so that's Indian influence. I would have traditional babooti, which is Afrikaans Malay, and then also cake Malay, which is slightly different. One's sweeter than the other, but really slightly, okay? So I think with South African culture, we need to look for those moments where we stress our history of hybridity in order to deal with xenophobia. And that we all are actually Makwerekwere, to take that word back, okay? All this in mind today, coming here and closing, and being a little bit stressed on the train and all that kind of stuff to get here, hence why I've taken my shoes off because I'm sweating too much, is I kind of feel like this notion of Ubuntu and this notion of stressing the hybridity, I think is something that's extremely, extremely important now, for someone who's living right now in the UK. Just thinking about things on the news recently, if we think about the Windrush generation, what's happening, a lot of people don't actually understand how it is to get in and out of Britain unless you have a British passport. I can say how it can be quite difficult. And then also with that, with the real push for kind of the whole Brexit thing. So I think there's this rise of kind of nationalism, which can be packaged in a nicely, it looks nice as a British flag as a cushion, you know, on your sofa, but it can actually have a negative effect with constant kind of banal flagging.